So welcome everyone. I'm Robbie Richardson, president of the United States Society for Ecological Economics. I'm going to turn it over to Erin Lennox, our executive director, who will introduce today's webinar. We're glad you're here.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. This event by the U.S. Society for Ecological Economics. For those of you who aren't familiar with our organization, the USSEE is an academic society that seeks to advance knowledge about the sustainable scale of economic activity, equitable distribution of resources, and priorities for environmental and social justice. And one way that we do that is through this webinar series. And we're very grateful to have Dr. Baustian here today presenting with us on the topic of collaboration between natural and social sciences. So Dr. Baustian is a coastal ecologist with the Water Institute of the Gulf. She has over 15 years of experience researching ecological response of aquatic ecosystems to nutrient enrichment, eutrophication and hypoxia, and she has extensive research studying the dead zone in the northern Gulf of Mexico. She currently focuses on providing technical support in data collection and development and application of analysis in ecosystem models to examine nutrient-related dynamics from the restoration efforts in Louisiana's coastal zone. And she also examines climate change-related effects on coastal vegetation and ecosystem processes. So in addition to her work with the Water Institute, Dr. Baustian is also the director of the Restore Act Center of Excellence for Louisiana, where she leads the administration of a competitive coastal research grants program, and she's also an adjunct faculty member in the Department of Oceanography and Coastal Sciences at Louisiana State University at Baton Rouge. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Melissa.
All right, thank you, Erin and Robbie. I'm happy to be here today and to talk about my research. I'm going to share my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so the title of my talk today is Insights on Effective Collaborations Between Natural and Social Scientists. And to begin, I wanted to tell you a little bit about where I work as a coastal ecologist. I work for a nonprofit independent research organization called the Water Institute of the Gulf. And our work helps ensure livable communities and a thriving economy and environment. And I thought I'd tell you a little bit more about this organization. We're located, our headquarters are in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on the mighty Mississippi River. So here's a diagram that shows the Mississippi River in downtown Baton Rouge. And so one of the really exciting things in Louisiana is the support of coastal research and water research. And so there's a water campus being planned. And there's actually some buildings already on this water campus. So this is what the vision is of this water campus. And currently, number one is where the Water Institute of the Gulf is housed. We rent the second floor of this building that overlooks the Mississippi River. But we also have collaborators on this campus, like Louisiana State University. The Center for River Studies is located here, and they have this really great physical model of the lower Mississippi River. And then a really important state agency for Louisiana is the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, and we work closely with them, and they're housed in this building. There's other office buildings in number 4 right now, and then number 5 is also being built. And we're excited about more buildings on this campus because supposedly they're going to put a coffee shop in, maybe in number 4, which will be great because we're kind of secluded in this area that's just being built in Baton Rouge. And so what's really neat about this nonprofit that I work for is that we really try to do an integrated approach. We have a coastal ecology program that works closely with an applied geosciences program, a coastal and deltaic systems modeling program, and a human dimensions program. And so that's where I'm going to talk a little bit, some of the research that I've been doing working with geographers and anthropologists from the human dimensions program. And so the goal of the company that I work for is to bring an interdisciplinary approach to understanding the complex dynamics of coastal, deltaic, and water systems, and develop tools that can be applied to address challenges facing society. And so here's a picture of our anthropologists working with community members and maps to really understand their concerns in coastal Louisiana. And I like this image because we're on an airboat, ecologists with modelers really trying to understand the system that we're studying. And so just to begin with, I'm going to talk about coastal ecosystems today since I'm a coastal ecologist and I really like aquatic ecosystems. And so just to start off, as many of you know, humans love water, right? We drink it. We enjoy being around it. It's really important for our well-being. I think we're learning more about that during these times of COVID and how we want to be outside. We want to be around a lake or a beach, or we just need time right away. But we also, as you'll know, humans impact these aquatic ecosystems, these coastal systems, through the way we use them and through activities that we do. So scientific teams with natural and social scientists are really needed to help assess and provide solutions. And so today I'm going to talk about coastal Louisiana and Michigan because they're really great places to study coastal ecosystems, and that's where I've done some of my research. And so to begin, here's a picture of Lake St. Clair, connecting channel between Lake Huron and Lake Erie, and there's this beautiful blue water. And so I'm going to show you some fun pictures of coastal Louisiana, why I love some of these habitats in Louisiana. And here are the swamps, right? These are the coastal forests, the fresh forested wetlands that we have. And the fresh water is really important for these swamps to be maintained. And there's been a lot of research on ecological flows and the needs to maintain fresh water so that these swamps can survive. We also have a lot of marshes in Louisiana. We have these marshes that span from fresh water all the way to our coast to more saline waters. And they're really important for our food web and to store carbon. They're really productive in capturing carbon, building biomass, and storing it into the soils. And so this is one of my favorite marshes. This is called a bull tongue, Sagittaria lancifolia, and we have these really vast marshes in coastal Louisiana. We also, in our salt marshes near the coast, we also have black mangroves that are moving northward because of climate change. And so these mangroves provide really important habitats for blue crabs that we like to eat and the brown shrimp that we like to eat in our po' boys, right? And so these coastal wetlands are really important also for attenuating storm surge, for knocking down the waves, for taking in some of the water when it starts flooding. And then we have a lot of estuarine open water. We have these estuaries and bays where the oysters can be found. And a lot of people like to kayak in these areas and fish. Louisiana is known as the sportsman's paradise. And so these water bodies are also really important. And we have barrier islands, and these are really important too. These are getting really beat up this summer from all the hurricanes, right? So what they are called our first line of defense. So they really help to protect our habitats, our coastal habitats, and the people that live in the coastal cities, because they will also help knock down the waves and the storm surge that is coming in. And then we have the coastal ocean. And so this is a really important place and habitat, again, where a lot of our fish and marine mammals live, and places that we also like to visit and swim. And so just to give you an introduction about one of our research projects, to give you some context, coastal Louisiana is going through a crisis. We have some major land loss issues. From 1932 to 2010, there's been a decrease of coastal land by 25%, about 5,000 square kilometers. This is about the size of Rhode Island. And this also, what this land loss means, we've lost a lot of habitats, a lot of wetlands, we've lost a lot of fisheries, and we have reduced protection from flooding from hurricanes. And so here's this famous red map a very depressing red map that shows the, from 1932, the land loss, but also the projected till 2050. And so the state of Louisiana hopes to invest about $50 billion into addressing these land loss issues. And they discuss this in their coastal master plan, which they update every 6 years. And so the latest one was 2017, and they discuss various restoration projects like marsh creation projects, or these proposed sediment diversion projects where they cut a hole in the levee of Mississippi River and engineer a structure to be able to move sediment from the river into the estuary to help replenish existing wetlands or build new wetlands. And they also have beach nourishment as another example, or Bear Island nourishment as some of the restoration projects. And so there's solutions, right? There's solutions that natural scientists and social scientists can help bring to the table about some of our coastal issues. And so those decisions can be made about natural, so we can use natural solutions like conserving existing habitats like salt marshes, or we can use more of a nature-based approach, which is creating solutions by utilizing nature-type processes like creating a marsh from sediment material. There's also engineered approaches like bulkheads and seawalls and levees. And so all of these are part of the discussion when deciding on the solutions. It's important to mention that these solutions should also require community buy-in. There should be meetings with locals and stakeholders to understand what their concerns are and also what their local knowledge is. And so these, we've been studying natural and nature-based solutions at the Water Institute of the Gulf. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about a study that we did with local communities. And so natural and nature-based solutions support essential ecosystem processes like wave attenuation, like I mentioned with the barrier islands. They really help knock down some of those waves and attenuate some of the water. They also are really important for improving water quality, right? And so the wetlands, the marshes, those swamps are able to take up those nutrients or help with nutrient assimilation. They provide essential fisheries habitat. So the reason why these natural nature-based solutions are really promising is because there's so many co-benefits that are associated with them. Another really important benefit of, for example, like a marsh creation project is that it can also store carbon in the soil. And so that's really important with our climate initiatives and our concerns about the rising temperatures and carbon dioxide concentrations in our atmosphere. And so one of these research projects that we had a team of natural and social scientists. So for example, we had an environmental anthropologist, Monica, who's pictured here, who really helped to run our community members and recruit our community members so we could work with them. We had a cultural geographer, Scott. We had a coastal ecologist, myself. And we had civil and environmental engineers like Harris and Hoon, Ehab, Yushi, and Eric. And so we all worked together as a team to understand how natural nature-based solutions could be used in coastal Louisiana. One of our questions, we had many, but one of them was based on community engagement, what are the possible natural and nature-based solutions to address coastal hazards in an estuary in Louisiana? So the estuary we were interested in studying was Breton Sound Estuary. And so our research methods were to, one, engage with local communities to understand hazards and solutions. And this was really important for us to make sure we had social scientists on our team who are experts and have experience in this. We also wanted to develop an ecosystem model. And so we had a team of engineers and ecologists to make sure we were representing this estuary. And we wanted to use this model to run scenarios with various natural and nature-based solutions. So to give you an example of this estuary, this is called Breton Sound Estuary, this area here. The city of New Orleans is up here in this area. just northwest of St. Bernard. This is where we had our community meetings and where this yellow star is. And so this is, it's very shallow water within this area. The Mississippi River is here to the west of Breton Sound Estuary. Two of the nature-based solutions that the community members are really interested in were these marsh creation projects outlined here in the green. They wanted to use dredge material from the Mississippi River or elsewhere to fill in areas that they thought were really important. And they also were really concerned about ridge restoration, these just natural areas that are a little bit higher than the marsh elevation that help to knock down waves, but also to prevent flooding into areas of their estuary. So this is the brown area, and these ridges were naturally developed in our deltaic setting, right? We're in this deltaic area. The Mississippi River has moved historically and has left some of these ridges in South Louisiana. And so some of our methods to engage the communities is we use this competency group. And it really relies on controversy. And restoration projects are definitely a controversy in South Louisiana. People have their opinions about which ones they like and which ones they don't like. And so we wanted to use that to engage with local residents and stakeholders, to engage with science and to think about natural and nature-based solutions. We wanted to bring scientists together and the concerned public together. So some of the attendees, the stakeholders were commercial fishermen, marina owners, charter fishermen, land managers. We had a Sea Grant extension agent, so from Louisiana Sea Grant. We had scientists and engineers that are on our team. So over the year, we hosted about 5 meetings with the community members. Again, it was facilitated by social scientists. And we really wanted to focus on this Breton Sound estuary. So here are some photos that show us around a table discussing some of the natural and nature-based solutions. And then here I am discussing with one of the community members about some of their ideas. And so the other part of our methods is that we wanted to use this existing ecosystem model that we developed that represents the wetlands and the estuary and open water habitats in this area. I'm not going to go into details about all of these methods, but just to give you an idea, this is a Delft 3D open source code model. We developed this by coupling 4 components. We call it the hydrodynamics, the nutrient dynamics, the vegetation dynamics, and morphodynamics together, and into this integrated biophysical model. And we met with the community members and showed them some of the input maps that we use. Like this is what information we have about vegetation type, for example. And they gave us feedback about some of the areas that they thought we needed improvement. We also wanted to design and run scenarios with them about the various solutions. And so we provided maps and worksheets so that we could discuss with them the various scenarios. And so this included, again, natural nature-based solutions. Maybe they wanted just to protect a marsh here, or maybe they wanted to create a new marsh over at a certain area. We also talked about future conditions. We talked about sea level rise and how much we expect the land to be sinking in this deltaic setting. And so we use this ecosystem model to run scenarios with the solutions.
So Melissa, one of our attendees asked, how did you recruit community members and what kind of outreach strategies did you use for these meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So how we did it is Monica, our anthropologist, used this, I think it's called snowball sampling method. So she knew some people. She went down, a few days and went and talked to the marina owner and, and then asked that person who they would suggest, right? And then she would go talk to the people that others suggested. And then what happened was if it seemed like the same name was getting brought up, then we thought that meant it was a good sign that that person should be involved in our meetings. Thanks, that's a great question. So when we engaged with the community members, there was some overall concerns about their backyard, right? This is the estuary that they fish in, that they have their company, you know, that they have their small businesses in, or they are managing land for a major landowner. And so the area of wetlands for future generations is a major concern. They're really worried about their children and their grandchildren and what's going to be left for them. And so they're also concerned about hydrological restoration, making sure we have this freshwater to saline gradient that estuaries need to thrive. There's also this proposed sediment diversion operation. So this really unique restoration project that I was telling you about would be to divert water and sediment from the Mississippi River to the estuary to help deliver sediment. And it's to replicate or simulate what the river used to do, right? We've leveed the Mississippi River. We don't allow it to move anymore. So it doesn't deliver sediment into our estuaries like it used to. And so this proposed sediment diversion is, there's concerns that the community has, especially about how it's operated and how often is it going to be operated? Is it going to flood, you know, the areas I like to fish and shrimp and crab, or, you know, how is it going to change the salinity of the animals that I like to harvest? And so that was definitely a concern of this community. Some of the inputs to our ecosystem model relied on subsidence rates. So that's the natural sinking of the land. And there's there isn't a lot of scientific research on this topic, and it's a definitely evolving process, and we're learning a lot more about subsidence. But the rates that were originally used in the model, some of the community members did not agree. They said, those rates are way too high. We don't experience that here. And so they were, you know, they voiced that concern and opinion so that we could understand, you know, their thoughts about how how the scientists were representing their estuary. And then also because of these proposed sediment diversions, not only are they going to divert fresh water and sediment, but because the Mississippi River has high nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, right? That's what is causing the massive dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. They're also concerned about the water quality of their estuary and how this restoration project might impact the water quality. And so that was brought up in these community meetings also. And so here's some results. So we brought out these large maps, we put them on the table, and we brainstormed with them. You know, with unlimited funds, what would you do? What do you want to see in your estuary? And so we talked about these nature-based projects. So marsh terracing or marsh creation, reforestation because of the swamps, or planting more trees in this area, the ridge restoration, and sand nourishment. Those were some ideas that we discussed. Some of the future conditions that we discussed were, you know, how often tropical storms or hurricanes could come in this area. If we're going to model it and simulate this, you know, how should we design those future model runs? You know, the sea level rise, and also allowing more sediment into, we have these existing freshwater diversions, these smaller diversions that move just fresh water from the river to the estuary. What if we allowed more sediment to be diverted? That was one of the questions or conditions they were interested in. And then also just altering the weather patterns. What happens if we get more rainfall? Or what happens if we have a drought summer, right? Like a extreme drought. And so those are some of the future conditions that we discussed. So here's a map that gives you an idea. And this is actually some of my handwriting, my notes when we were discussing some of the marsh areas that they wanted to restore, or some of the reforestation with cypress trees, those swamp trees. And so what we did is, with the geographer on our team, we were able to digitize these notes. We had 5 groups, as you can see here, the 5 mapping groups, and they were able to put this into a GIS system so that we could digitize it. And this is the geographer on our team, Scott Hemmerling et al. Published this in this paper. And so we were able to take some of the information we got from the community members and utilize it by digitizing it and also including it in our model runs. And so here's an example of just some of the model output that we provided. This was the initial conditions. So we used year 2015 as the initial conditions. This gives you an idea of the estuary and the type of the salinity gradient we have in Louisiana. So we have this fresh and intermediate marshes in the yellow. The green is more of our brackish marshes, and then this is the red, the saline marshes. And so this was an example of, you know, some of the maps that we showed the community members to get their input about, you know, what they have observed when they're out there versus, you know, what our thoughts were about those conditions. And then another scenario that we ran based on of their concerns is they wanted these ridges, right? They wanted these ridges restored, meaning adding some more sediment on top to represent what their heights used to be. And so the reason why they wanted this nature-based solution is because they wanted to be protected from flooding, right, when the hurricanes come. And so we simulated Hurricane Katrina force winds and then represented the surge height difference. What happens with and without this ridge that they wanted in their estuary. And what's really interesting about this is that the difference you can see about a 1 meter difference in the dark red is in these areas here, because Katrina came in from this area and force water into these pockets, right? So the direction and of the hurricanes hitting the coast really makes a difference of what gets flooded and what doesn't. And so that makes it challenging when you're trying to design a nature-based solution, because this is what the community was thinking, but then they realized that when a Katrina might occur, that the water will increase in this area, but will decrease over here. So it depends on maybe where they live or where they like to fish, you know, if these areas would be flooded by this type of storm. And so what we did as a team is we developed a report. We called this our participatory modeling report, connecting local knowledge and scientific understanding. It was about 34 pages. We wanted to make sure it was for more of a general audience, and we wanted to focus on the community's natural and nature-based solutions. So we developed this report with the help of our director of communications, who used to be a newspaper reporter. So she was fantastic in helping us make sure that, you know, what we were writing and reporting could really be easily digestible from our local community members. We didn't want to make it, you know, too detailed, too jargony. And so we were really excited to be able to provide those community members this report of our project with them. We also were able to publish 4 complementary papers, manuscripts based on this study. And so we had the anthropologist lead a paper here, an ecologist lead a paper, the geographer lead a paper, and engineer lead a paper. So we really worked together and started with outlines and then tried to make sure they were complementary and that each of them would be unique and had maybe a certain figure or a certain map, so that they would be this collection of papers from our disciplines leading it to represent our project.
Melissa, one of our participants just asked what type of social scientists were involved. They asked specifically about sociologists. I heard you just mention anthropologists.
Yeah, so we had an anthropologist and a geographer. And so, so from this study, here are some of the insights. I would say, you know, I'm a sample size of 1, but this has been another project that I've worked collaboratively with other social scientists. And what I've learned is that, you know, when we're doing these type of research projects, it's really important to have clear roles and responsibilities. We knew Monica here was taking the task and finding the community members, leading those meetings with the community members. And so we thought that was really important. We also had, we scheduled and we met frequently throughout our 1-year study. And so we had regularly scheduled, like every other week, meetings where the whole team gets together. We talk about, you know, the goals of the project, who is doing what. And I find this is really important with this diverse collaboration. And I was curious about what others in the literature have said about these type of collaborations between natural and social scientists. And Holm et al. 2013 had a similar finding that really takes time, right? And you need to make sure you set time aside to meet and discuss and to learn from each other. As I mentioned, we developed complementary outlines for manuscripts that led to 4 diverse publications. We actually had, it was a little bit challenging doing this because some of the journals and reviewers struggled with our unique papers. They didn't know what to do with us. We had all these disciplines, you know, we had the community engagement. And so a few of us had to submit our paper to other journals because the first journal couldn't find reviewers. They said they had a hard time finding reviewers to assess our paper. And then I noticed that this paper, Fisher et al. 2011, you know, really in their discussion conclusion, recommended that, you know, we need to make sure we're supporting these interdisciplinary journals. And that journal, you know, and I thought that made sense after our experience with trying to publish in some other journals. And this is a picture of my colleague Hoon, who is an engineer and modeler that was showing some of the model output to our community members. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to another project that I worked on with social scientists. And so this is on the Great Lakes.
Can we do 2 quick questions on that before you shift gears?
Yeah.
We have one, what do you envision the final outcomes of the study would have looked like without the participation of social scientists?
It would have been really, it would have been really hard to get the community members. I think we would have struggled with that, and to not even know where to start. And I think having the anthropologist on our team and understanding, you know, who in the community is really involved and who's really concerned about some of our coastal issues, I think that was really valuable.
Sure. And the second question was, I guess, you know, how it would be different if they were actually doing social science research instead of having the role of the social scientists limited to organizing and hosting the meetings.
Yeah, I agree. And we were hoping we would be able to do more of that and have more interviews and more content analysis of each of the community members. And I think because of this study with 1 year and trying to get all these meetings, like 5 meetings organized and hosted, we ended up running out of time. But that is definitely something that that I know that our geographer and anthropologist wanted to do more of.
And we have a few more. Do you want to jump into your other study though and then do them at the end, or would you like to do those right now?
I can do those right now, no problem. Okay.
Someone asked, what type of interdisciplinary journals did you approach?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the journals that we did not, and so I think, well, I guess it depends how you define the type of journals that are interdisciplinary. I can give you just one. My personal experience was I thought the Ecological Society of America's journal, Ecology and Society, would have been a good fit. And I contacted the editor, and they were like, no, we don't think this is a good fit for our journal, which is fair. I just, you know, it was really, I guess it was, I was surprised because I thought this type of work would have fit. And so I think a good lesson learned from that was I was glad that I contacted the editor and told them about our study and telling them that we were trying to find, you know, a good fit for our papers.
Sure. So the next question is, did you find your chosen methods either became more complementary or were significantly changed in response to each other?
That is a good question. I think they became more complementary. I think as time went on and through the project, we were able to really learn from each other and help each other with those papers too.
And then finally, what was done with the models and were the natural solutions employed?
No, that's a great question. So this was just all like theoretical. What would you do? One thing that was really exciting from this project, though, is that I met some of the community members, you know, at another event, and they were and they were so excited to tell me that they, you know, went to another meeting and they were talking about a nature-based solution, like let's just say like a ridge restoration. And it was brought up, and one of the community members that was involved in our project raised their hand and was like, well, we modeled that, we tried that, and it's not gonna do what you think it's gonna do. And so to us, having them involved in understanding the type of models that are being developed and used in coastal Louisiana was really helpful. And so when they go to their community meetings, or when the state asks what type of restoration projects they want, they've learned a lot from our project in testing their ideas, that they now are better informed to go to these meetings with state officials and explain, you know, why or why not they want certain projects. I think that was really exciting to hear. Okay, should I go on, Erin?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the next project I'm going to talk about was this project that I did during my postdoctoral fellowship at Michigan State University. And so, and this is I was just saying, this is just a really beautiful picture of the Great Lakes. This is Lake Huron by Mackinac Island. And so one of the projects I worked on when I was a postdoc was really applying and thinking about coupled human and natural systems. And so one of the overarching questions we had was, what pathways are linking the natural system, like the lakes, the aquatic ecosystem, to the human systems or the socioeconomic systems? And so part of this research was at the Center for Water Sciences, which was a center at Michigan State that actually funded 2 postdocs. And it was a really neat experience because, and this is where I got my first taste at interdisciplinary research and working with social scientists. So at Michigan State, they hired 2 postdocs, a natural scientist and a social scientist, to work together. And so they hired an economist. Here is my colleague, Georgia Mavramati, and an ecologist, myself. And they asked us to work together and to study the Great Lakes. And so this is one of the projects and questions that we came up with while we were working together. And so we decided to focus on this smaller lake, this connecting channels. It's called Lake St. Clair. So it's between Lake Huron and Lake Erie. It's this heart-shaped lake. It's the city of Detroit is on its coastline. And so we were studying this lake, and what's really interesting and neat about the Great Lakes is that there's, you know, they have a legacy of over 100 years of water quality science and policy. So lots of information and lots of interest, right, to protect these important aquatic ecosystems. And so I'm sure many of you know, but just to review, the Great Lakes provide essential ecosystem services. They provide drinking water, which is really important. Also, the sport fishery is important. Beach use, there's lots of beaches in the Great Lakes, and they're monitored and reported for their safety. And shipping and transportation is also really important through the Great Lakes. And so, and part of this, you know, 100 years of legacy is that, you know, human activity and human growth has really dominated the shores of the Great Lakes. So here is a map from 1905 to 2001, and the black just shows the expansion of the city of Detroit in this area and around this lake called Lake St. Clair. And so we were really interested in understanding how the Clinton River watershed, this watershed here, and how the Clinton River, which drains into Lake St. Clair, could impact Lake St. Clair, and using this coupled human natural systems framework to apply it to Lake St. Clair. So just to give you an idea, the Clinton River watershed is known as an area of concern. There's areas of concerns all over the Great Lakes. And the reason why is because it has problems with eutrophication, degradation of fish and wildlife populations, and beach closures. There's about over 1 million people in this watershed. The land use is, as you can tell, it's developed because it's closer to the city of Detroit. And then more in the northern area, there is agriculture up here in forests. And some of the key ecosystem services in this area is really the drinking water and the beach use, the recreation. And so with an economist and we hosted a workshop. We wanted to understand with experts in the area what they thought the coupling was between the Lake St. Clair system and the socioeconomic system. So we wanted to think about and how they could be linked based on those ecosystem services or those benefits to humans, right? How do we benefit from the lake? And so we had these various tables where we brainstormed with them and drew arrows and filled out these boxes to better understand. Georgia and I both, we discussed this. We had our own null hypotheses about how we thought this was linked, but it was really great to test this with the experts in the area. And so we asked 15 experts to meet with us. They represented people from the planning community, like community planners, other ecologists, engineers, others with expertise in economics and public health. And here's a photo that we took with them to really ask questions about how they thought the human and natural systems were coupled. And so overall, we were able to develop this diagram and to illustrate how these two systems were coupled. And I can run through this with you, and this gives you an idea, the first about the ecosystem services, right? Those benefits. How do humans benefit from Lake St. Clair? And so, right, so we talked about the fresh water for drinking, but also recreation, boating, fishing, the beaches were really important to them, right? And so this arrow influences their human well-being, their economic needs, their environmental needs. But these ecosystem services also influence human activities like tourism, the boating, the beach usage, and fishing. What's also really interesting is that other human activities in the watershed also impact the lake, right? So the agriculture and urban land use and runoff. So you think about the nutrients running off from the land can produce this runoff, right? The stressor from the socioeconomic activities. And that can really influence the lake. And how we know that is because we can measure some of these indicators, such as total phosphorus or total nitrogen. And those indicators or drivers, I think of, will cause responses in the ecosystem conditions, such as biomass of flora and fauna. And one example I can give you is like of the nutrients, total phosphorus and total nitrogen will influence algal blooms, right? And those algal blooms will affect the freshwater and the quality of it for drinking. And so that gives you an idea of how these systems are linked. And so if those algal blooms impact, say, the freshwater, or they impact people's recreational needs, right? There's also E. coli contamination on the beaches, then that impacts people's recreation or human well-being. And so that can drive policy changes. And we wanted to list those policies about what is being used in the Lake St. Clair area now. And George and I had some ideas, but these asterisks on this diagram show what that workshop helped provide. And so the workshop attendees, those experts said, well, you also forgot about the Michigan phosphorus ban. That's an important policy that will impact the coupling between this human and natural system. And so these asterisks here just show some of the information that we were able to add on this diagram based on that workshop. And so what did I learn from this experience, right? What are my insights on effective collaboration? And so here's a great picture besides having an economist help you with your lab work. So I found this great picture of Georgia helping me. You know, we also learned a lot about needing shared terminology. And I found this in some other papers who talk about this. And, you know, sometimes in our own discipline, in our expertise, we get lost in our jargon, right? But it's okay to have maybe a term that we all can agree on, that this is going to represent our study or how we want to communicate our research. And so shared terminology to communicate is really important. And I mentioned this before, but I have to mention it again, is that time is so important for these effective collaborations. You know, we need time to set up our meetings. We need time to discuss and really think about each other's disciplines and how they fit when you're doing this research. And we just need time to educate each other and to learn from each other. And so I learned that, you know, this experience during my postdoc training was incredibly useful. And I think it really helped me be prepared to work in this very interdisciplinary team at the Water Institute of the Gulf where I am now. And so maybe it's something to consider that training more postdocs in this type of collaboration might be the time to do that. Another thing that I talk about a lot with my social scientist colleagues is that I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone all the time when I'm working on these projects with them. And I think if you want to have these effective collaborations, you need to commit to being uncomfortable. And you're not going to understand all the aspects or details of a research project. And I think that's okay. You have a lot to learn, and that's a part of the research. And so lastly, I just wanted to end with, you know, solving these environmental challenges really requires these interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary teams. And, you know, there's a lot of research coming out about the science of team science. And I think we could learn more about that, those type of research findings about, you know, what can we really do to support these teams, and especially when there's all these environmental challenges that are facing us. I've also, you know, learned and realized that conceptual models and numerical models are often used to assess the linkages between human and natural systems or within those systems. But it also really helps with collaboration. I think having a visual and something to point to and to explain those arrows and to make sure that we're using the same terminology so we can communicate well, I think those models have been useful in the prior research that I've conducted. And so lastly, I'd just like to acknowledge for this Breton Sound Estuary project that we worked on, it was supported by the Science and Engineering program at the Water Institute of the Gulf that got funds from Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority and the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. And I'd also like to, you know, thank NSF that supported our work in Lake St. Clair and the Great Lakes. Thank you all so much for meeting with me today and listening to my research. I'm happy to take any more questions.
We have one on there now. Someone was wondering if you could provide the name of the paper you and Georgia wrote together about Lake St. Clair. They would like to read that.
Yes, that was paper in Ambio. I think it was 2014. Yes, Mavramati et al. 2014 in Ambio.
Great. And someone had an earlier question at the beginning when you showed that photo in the marshland with the grasshopper. They were wondering if those were eggs on the grasshopper's leg.
Oh, good question. Let's go see. I don't know. I'm not so on its legs. That's a really good question. I don't know what those are, but these are lubbers, these black grasshoppers, and we actually have them in our backyard, and they're awesome. I really like them. They start off really small in the spring, and they get really big by August, and so they also love grazing in these freshwater marshes.
Okay, we have someone wondering, in both cases, were participants fatigued by all the meetings and communications, or were they encouraged and invested more?
Yeah, fatigue is a real concern, especially in South Louisiana. We've talked about this, about, are the same community members just getting exhausted from all of us asking them questions and being at these workshops? But I think both in Michigan and Louisiana, the people that we have engaged, I think they were really excited. I find that the people who agreed to this are really interested and curious. And one thing that I've learned too is that they really appreciate getting our papers or reports. We wanted to make sure we followed up with them. I remember one of the community members in Michigan told us, no one ever follows up with us. No one tells us, how things, what were the next steps or what was written. And so that would be my advice, to try to really to send them, your report or your manuscript, just so they have something that they, that they can understand as the product from their involvement.
And someone else asks, what concepts or views from the social scientists did you find most obnoxious, and which ones were more helpful and useful?
Oh my gosh, that's really funny. I'm trying to think. I can't really think of anything that was obnoxious. Let me think about it. I can't think anything right now off the top of my head.
All right, so another one, it says, I can appreciate the benefit of incorporating the perspectives of community expert into both of these projects. However, I wonder how well they capture the actual community values and priorities when the community representatives do not appear to represent the diversity of the community, i.e. predominantly white professionals shown in the picture, though there's a large Black population in both communities. Were there efforts to include diverse perspectives in these projects, and would you expect that the direction of these projects or the findings might change if there was more incorporation of diversity?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I agree that there needs to be more efforts to make sure that that we're being inclusive in these meetings. And so I think in South Louisiana, I'm trying to think of, when we recruited the individuals, about, the decisions that were being made about who, who should be asked, or who, who agreed to be on it. And so that is something that I remember us talking about it. I'm not quite sure how we came up with those final community members, but that's a really good question for me to ask our anthropologists about that.
Someone else asks, is there any sort of unique aspect of the environmental conservation field that makes it more or less difficult to collaborate across the sciences in comparison to other related fields?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because, in the environmental fields and in our coastal work, people just, kind of like what I mentioned at the beginning, people just love water. They love the coast. It's easy to relate to. And so getting various disciplines together to focus on water or our coast, I think that helps a lot. I think because people can just really relate to it in their personal lives and in their professional lives.
Someone else asks if you had any conflicts with social scientists during the research, and if so, how did you resolve?
Yeah, there wasn't that much conflicts, but there was definitely, we wanted to make sure that the community input was discussed, and I remember, or it was what do I want to say, recognized, right? And so we took notes, we had, you know, post workshop notes about, and we recorded a lot of the meetings. And so I think it wasn't a huge, a major problem, but I remember us having discussions about, you know, so-and-so said they wanted this in the model. And are we going to do this? You know, are we going to change this? And, you know, and some of our modelers were like, I don't know if we can do that. And, you know, and we're like, but we really need to, they want this and we need to consider this. And so I think some of the aspects of our modeling, we discussed and went back and forth about how do we address that. And Scott Hemmerling's paper, that Hemmerling et al. 2020, he talks about that, about what they wanted in the model and things that we were able to do. And mainly because some of the things we weren't able to do because we just didn't have the time. Like, you know, and it was just a really short project, 1 year trying to, you know, get their feedback. But we wanted to explain that why. We didn't want to feel like we were ignoring them.
So we're right at 2 o'clock, but we have 2 more questions here.
Okay.
The first is, have you found that a lot of funding sources are open to these sorts of collaborative projects, or are they reluctant because they don't fit perfectly into the narrow scope of the funding source?
Yeah, so I think one of the really exciting things, and Georgia and I just worked on this together, is that NSF has this Coast and People new initiative. And so they are wanting to fund projects and research that really incorporates people and equity into these, you know, environmental challenges. And so I actually think a lot of the funding agencies recognize the importance of these collaborations, and they are trying to fund them.
And then finally, someone asks, what do you see as the role for interdisciplinary scholars who themselves utilize interdisciplinary methods and approaches and have training in natural and social science methods? How would you see this changing the collaborations?
I think it's really good. I think more of the teams need to have those interdisciplinary to help with communication and kind of help bridge some of those gaps. I think those people that are trained in that is fantastic. And I think that just helps this type of research and move forward. I think it's really good.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Melissa, for speaking with us today. For everyone that was here, this webinar was recorded. It's going to be made available and posted on our website, and you'll get an email when that is available. Anyone that registered through Eventbrite will get an email with that link. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We hope to see you at future USSEE webinars. Bye, everyone.